Chess Olympiad 2014 from Tromso, Norway. It's going to be a great Olympiad. They're predicting that 100 million people will watch the games online. 1,500 different competitors, as well as 160 nations. What a great event. I'm told this is the 4th largest sporting event in the world. Don't miss any of the action. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again with another chess video for you. Another game from round 3 of the 41st Chess Olympiad, currently being played in Tromso, Norway. Of course, what would be fitting with the Olympiad in Norway, but the #1 rated player in the world, current world champion, Magnus Carlsen from Norway. It's a Norway-Montenegro round. Interesting game. You get these lopsided ratings sometimes. Magnus is 350 points higher rated than his competitor. Let's see how it turns out. Carlsen is white. Nikola Djukic, I'm sure I butchered that, is black. And it's going to be a Scandinavian. What better than play in Norway against the Norwegian, who's the world champion, but the Scandinavian. Queen takes, knight, queen d8. Now I play the Scandinavian quite often. I usually go back to d6. Queen d8, d4, knight f6, knight f3, bishop g4. I usually play the Scandinavian when I'm trying to just get my opponent out of any book preparation that he might have had, even though I'm only a 1600 player. Sometimes these guys book up and you might follow in their preparation. I didn't want to do that when I play the Scandinavian. h3, kicking the bishop, bishop takes, queen takes. Now c6. That's a multi-purpose move, of course. You got to guard this pawn because the queen's bearing down on it. And if you go knight here, this bishop's going to come out and it's going to be a pain in the neck. So c6 is the answer to that. Queen d3, e6, g3. I'll say white is up, and there's a comment in one of my videos from an individual that when I say you're up the minor exchange, a bishop over a knight, he kind of took offense to that. It's just a general term. It's another way of saying white has the bishop pair. Knight, bishop g2, bishop. Interesting setup over here, though. I gotta say, with the pawns and the bishop. Both castles, a3. Didn't want that pesky bishop sitting on b4 bothering the knight. It's a 2/3 of a pawn advantage for white. I consider this an even position. I think black's more than okay. Queen c7, rook d1, just developing. He brings his other rook around. b3. That one I don't understand. Now that is one of the choices of the computer. Computer likes a4, rook to e1, and bishop to e3. None of the choices were there. He went b3. Who want to argue with Magnus Carlsen, the highest rated player ever in the history of chess? Rook. He wanted to fianchetto the other bishop. Hey, let him. a6. Knight to e2. Now this is where I have a problem. In my own playing, I mean. Not with any of the players here of the game. How do you formulate a plan? What do you do? And that's something I've struggled with. I played chess as a boy. I'm 57 years old. I gave it up for about 20 years and I went back about 5 years ago. And I still have the same problem. Formulating a plan. Stop the video and see what you would do as black or white to try to formulate a plan. I think we can learn a lot from that. Black decides to go e5. He's just going to take that center pawn at white's and just challenge it. c4. Pawn takes, knight takes. Now all the center pawns are gone for black. White just does control this key square with his c-pawn. I think black's in better shape, and the computer bears that out. It's a tiny, minute advantage for black. Now it's going back to even. So I hear against Magnus Carlsen. You're on move 18, and you're playing the Scandinavian, and you have an even game, and you're 350 points less rated than he is. You're doing okay. Bishop b5, hitting the knight. Queen to c2 to guard the bishop that was left unguarded. c5, hitting the knight. Knight comes back, hitting the bishop. Bishop takes, queen takes. All that was really about is black wanted to trade the dart squared bishops. So here we are. Move 21. And it's basically an even game or a minute advantage for black. Good for Nikola. I'm sure he's going to be incredibly intimidated by Magnus, especially in Norway. Knight to f8. Knight to h4 is the computer's choice. I'm assuming what he's trying to do is trying to get his knight in here to just disrupt black's kingside. Knight to g6, and he does bring the knight to f5. Knight comes back to challenge it. White decides not to. He brings the knight back, which is actually, I think that's a good move. That's a really good spot for that knight. And there's nothing else that can chase it off but another knight. b6 just to reinforce the c5 pawn. And b4. Magnus is going to open up the queen side. What to do? What to do? Knight to c6. Rook takes, rook takes. Black's got the open file, the d file. That's pretty important. Rook to b1. C takes, A takes. Knight e5. Small advantage now for white. It's a little awkward with his c pawn there. We'd have to see what white does here. Queen to c3. Of course, guarding the pawn. And this is where I think the pressure might have gotten to Nikola from Montenegro. The computer calls for h5 or g6. I like h5. I don't care much for g6, but I like h5. He decides to go rook to d3, which seems like an incredibly natural move. Get your rook right into play and challenge the queen. But the problem is, Magnus goes queen to a1, which is the computer move. Now, how would you find that move? I know I wouldn't. h5. Now, those of you that were wondering why I didn't take the pawn, after knight takes, queen takes, b5, queen takes, and white is just all over you. Seems like a natural move, but it wasn't. Queen takes the pawn. h4, just to bust things up. Magnus closes that down. Rook to d2, trying to get some counterplay here. c5, pawn takes, and Magnus pushes the pawn right through. He's got his rook here. He's got his queen in here. And he's got this bishop bearing down. That pawn is looking pretty good there. And it's almost a 2-point advantage now for white. Knight, bring the knight back to try to stop the pawn, try to blockade it. And Magnus just pushes it right through. Queen f4. a8 check. King h7. Now, I'll tell you, you're sitting on black's side, and there's a pawn on the 6th rank, and you're playing Magnus Carlsen. I'd be a little nervous. Queen f3. Queen takes, bishop takes. Rook to d4. Doesn't seem too concerned now with that pawn, because that knight could always blockade it on b8. b7. Rook to b4. Only real move. Rook to d1. Knight to e5. Says the king move doesn't really change much. That was a computer suggestion because you'll go bishop to g2. After knight d5, bishop g2 anyway, knight c2, hitting the rook. Rook goes to f4. See, that's the problem. You've got a light squared bishop here. It doesn't guard the queening square. So Magnus has got to bring around either his rook or a knight to do that. For those of you that were wondering, rook to a4, rook to a4 instead. Rook to d5, f6, and rook takes the pawn. And of course we all see why the knight can't take, because the pawn will queen. After rook to f4, rook to d5 for Magnus, f6. Again, we see that same scenario. What would you do, of course? Rook takes. Can't take the rook, obviously, because you're queen. So knight has to blockade. Rook to c8. And that's where Nikola threw in the towel. We're on move 45. The game is lost. Give you an idea. After knight, bishop, knight takes, and you're just doomed. There's no way you can stop that pawn from queening. Can't even swing back with your rook, because this knight's guarded in the spot. And there it is. Magnus Carlsen, current world champion, playing for Norway against Montenegro. I thought it was an interesting game. I felt bad for the kid that played Carlsen, but it's a game he'll always remember, even though he lost. Anyway, folks, I just want you to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And I want to thank all my new subscribers. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.